first, just kind of tell me how'd you get into the line of work? Biology, turtles, that like how'd you get into it?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in science and um, kind of knew for the most part that's what I wanted to get into. I didn't know, when I was little, I was always really interested in learning about animals, variety of animals. And actually, when I went to Tuscaloosa for undergrad, I started out as a marine biology major and then switched just to biology. And then I went to Appalachian State for my master's. And there, I studied two species of salamanders. And so that's kind of when I started to sort of narrow my focus into herpetology, um, which is the study of amphibians and reptiles. But it kind of in those lines around undergrad, started grad school, I really started getting interested in turtles, and kind of learning more about their ecology and conservation. And so when I was looking for PhD programs, want to get a little bit closer to home. I grew up in Southern Alabama, and I wanted to choose an advisor who worked really with sea turtles because I thought that's what I was kind of wanted to focus on. So um, found Dr. Thane Wibbles, who's at UAB, still is at UAB, and just one of the foremost experts in sea turtles, uh, sort of ecology, conservation, physiology, and so started working with him. And For my PhD, I didn't work with sea turtles. I worked with diamondback terrapins, which are one of the most beautiful species of turtles. Um, they live on the Gulf Coast in salt marshes, and they occur kind of along the Atlantic and Gulf Coast. Maryland terrapins. That's their mascot. And so I love that. Love working with that species. And then I was actually at the end of my PhD. I was thinking I may be interested in environmental policy. So I applied for and was accepted into a fellowship program where I worked in Washington, D.C. for a year, actually in the U.S. Senate, working in marine policy. And that was a year was a few months too long for me to be in D.C. I didn't like wearing suits. I didn't like being stuck in an office. It wasn't enough science for me. I mean, the best thing that come out of that was I met my future wife, and uh, um, so at the end of that program, I got a job offer to be a sea turtle biologist in Mississippi. So I was there for a few years and um, really enjoyed that, but found out that when you work with highly endangered species that are very popular, there's a lot of oversight that comes with that, and a lot of red tape and a lot of bureaucracy, and so I was like, "Oh, okay, sea turtles are awesome. They're amazing." And I still kind of have a dabble in sea turtles, if I could say that. Collaborate with some on some sea turtle projects, but I was ready to kind of find something new. And actually, what brought me back to Alabama was a job with Birmingham Audubon, which is now Alabama Audubon, a great
Wow.
conservation organization. They just do amazing things. But I am not an ornithologist. I would never say that I was. I would never want to demean that great
Sure.
group of scientists and call myself one. And so when I was there, I was kind of just like I was always trying to figure out ways to get back into turtles. And I think some of the members kind of saw that and kind of chuckled at. I mean, I even started a project where I was looking at bald eagle predation of turtles, which actually turned into a study that got published last year. So it wasn't just a
Wow.
waste of time. I mean, it was science,
Yeah.
and found out that there are some bald eagles that really target the mess out of turtles. I mean, they really eat them up. And so that was a interesting study, but long story short, I apologize for rambling, but
No, this is interesting.
during my time at Birmingham Audubon, um, I started seeing that there really wasn't a lot of research being done with turtles in the Birmingham area, and so what kind of that sort of morphed into what I do now, the Urban Turtle Project, which is and where I started with is looking at turtle populations in the sort of urban footprint of Birmingham, Cahaba River, and some tributaries like Shays Creek, Black Warrior River, mainly their tributaries. Um, and that's really started looking at that and started seeing that even though obviously we're a very urbanized landscape. We have a fair number of turtles living in beside us, which is
Sure.
a really cool thing. And so I wanted to see what I could do to document it and start a long-term study to kind of see how they do over time. Um, and then the Urban Turtle Project has grown over time. Where I expanded sites. I go do sampling in Tuscaloosa now. I've done it in some other sites. I have a chicken turtle study down in Connecticut National Forest, which is south of Andalusia,
Hmm.
which is really cool. That's just a really unique turtle species in its own right. Um, and I've also past couple of years have taken some students from Talladega College down to Belize and started to do some turtle work down there. And so, but I always sort bring it back like, well, it started here with the Urban Turtle Project, and the news story that kind of got your attention last week, with alligator snappers. When I started the Urban Turtle Project, I didn't think I'd be working with them. I kind of sort of listed the species that I would should come into contact with, and alligator snappers
Right.
were not on that list because they hadn't been scientifically documented. I know, when I talk about this, people say, "Oh, we know they've been here," and I'm not disputing that one bit. A science can learn some from the general public. But from a science standpoint, they hadn't been documented here. And so I always say that's been one of the most exciting parts of this project is to be able to um, expand the range, expand the knowledge base for the species and work with them personally because they are just
Yeah.
one of the coolest turtles.
Yeah. Wow. So how do you like what there's a lot I want to unpack. I guess I'm going to start with like sampling. Like you mentioned like places all over the state. What what does that mean? What goes into it? What are you looking for? That kind of thing.
Well, um, sometimes it starts with a question, like the chicken turtle study. I was like, okay, um, there really hasn't been um, a they've been documented in different places, but they haven't been really studied. Um, and so I was like, well, let me pick one particular area where I know they occur, and let's start studying that population. Let's start studying. Okay, when are they there? When are they not? We're using acoustic telemetry, um, putting acoustic tags on turtles to document when they're in the ponds and when they leave because, for this species, they're, in a lot of populations, they're known to leave their aquatic habitat in the summer and kind of find refuge in sort of upland habitats. Well, is that always true? And so that particular study started with a question. Um, with alligator snappers, it started with, "Holy crap, they're here. Let's see where else they are." And so one of my best sites, I made contact with because a friend that I grew up with, you know, knew that I was working with turtles, and her neighbor had a map turtle that they found in the pool, and so she knew to call me. And then also that friend had um, uh, recently, or at that time, recently snagged an alligator snapper on a fishing pole. And so I was like, well, they're there right there. Let me trap. And in this one area, I've probably tagged probably close to 20 unique individuals in a very small stretch of the Cahaba. And now what we're doing is I'm collaborating with someone from the Birmingham Zoo and someone from the Cahaba River Society so they can maybe sample some areas of the Cahaba that it's hard for me to get to, because I don't for a lot of my stuff I just wade in with my traps, and so there are obviously stretches of the Cahaba that are harder for me to sample. Doesn't mean that the snappers aren't there. It's just
Sure.
I can't sample it with kind of with how I usually do it. And so what we're wanting to do, that person from the zoo contacted me. She's like she's interested in they have an internal grant um, funding, and so she wanted to go for this grant, and what could she do turtle wise. And I was like, well, here's something, let's
Yeah.
look for alligator snappers in other areas of the Cahaba. And so it has been different for different studies for me. Sometimes the questions comes first, and then other times observations come and then the questions come later. And that's can be how science works.
Sure.
And so that's been one of the exciting things of some of the questions that I didn't think I would think of asking, that have come up from just the data that we've collected.
Yeah. Now, don't give away the exact spot. I wouldn't ask you to do that. But are the 20-ish or so alligator snappers near us here in the Trustful area, or like the Cahaba's obviously really long, or are they more?
Yeah, no, I would say um, one thing I tell folks, what's one of the biggest things that science has taught me is that the more I learn, the more I learn, I don't know as much, and so I would never say never,
Yeah, Don
but
Henley sang that in an Eagles song. The more I know, the less I understand.
yeah, I mean that can definitely hold true for science. And that's the beauty of it. There's always
Yes.
more to learn.
So,
That's one, and not to go off on a side, but that's one of the greatest things that I enjoy about teaching is the ability to learn myself. Um,
yes.
but uh, um, but I would say that the Cahaba in the Trustville area is a little too small for alligator snappers. Um, they tend to like some deeper pools, especially the larger individuals. And so I don't necessarily think we have them here. And I say that, and then when someone sees this, they'll want to call me an idiot and be like, "Hey, I saw one right here by the park." And so I was like, "Oh,
Yeah. Well, that's kind
but
of what I was. That's kind of what I was wondering. Just our little stretch at the headwaters here, and I'm looking at another screen, and I'm looking at a picture of one of these alligator snappers. And
yeah,
I'm sorry, Andy. That thing's a daggum dinosaur.
no, and that is
It
I
looks.
I think that's the beauty of them, is that and one of the coolest aspects of turtles, if you look at the the fossils of turtles and some of the
Yeah.
the supposed illustrations of some of the first turtles, they look very similar, so,
Oof.
turtles found a body plan that worked for them, and they, for the most part, they stuck with it for hundreds of millions of
Wow.
years. They have survived, and so, um, like first, like I always sort of joke around like red air sliders. I say, people say cockroaches will survive the apocalypse. Well, so will red air sliders, I think, because you can find them anywhere. But I will say, as far as alligator snappers, now the furthest upstream that I have seen documentation of someone, private owner who lives right down from the outlet malls.
Hmm.
Um, that landowner sent me um, a video clip of an adult alligator snapper walking up some riffles of in the Cahaba, and it blew me
Wow.
away. As I cannot believe they're this far north. So, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily that far from our stretch of the Cahaba,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I don't think they would be necessarily in Trussville city limits, but
Sure.
they're probably not far.
Yeah.
And again, that's cool. I mean, this is North America's largest freshwater turtle. Can get up to 200 pounds. Live decades. I mean, they're just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Just
What
gotta
is
watch
there?
your, you just gotta watch your hands. Watch your fingers around them, and you'll be fine.
I've seen your hand pop up a couple of times. It doesn't look like you've ever taken a
Uh,
bad bite. You've got all 10
yeah,
digits.
got all 10 fingers and toes. I tell people, I, you know,
Knock on wood.
yeah, knock on wood. I have been bitten by turtles, and I've been bitten most smaller turtles. But what it tells me is I never want to get pinched by a bigger one because, ooh man, they can do some damage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm looking. I mean, this thing. I'm gonna have to get this thing off the screen here in a minute. But like, they look like just this particular picture. Like his mouth's open. He looks like he could be a pretty ferocious thing. What's a alligator snapper like? Like what's their mo in the water? What are they eating? What are they doing? That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the most part, in their habitat, they're top of the food chain when they're adults. They can, pretty much eat whatever they can get in their mouth. So fish, they're um, known as ambush predators. So they
Wow.
can lie at the bottom of the riverbed, creek bed, still, and with their mouths gaping wide open. And they have on the tip of their tongue, they have like a little lure, a fleshy extension of their tongue that they can wiggle. And they'll do that to kind of lure in a fish, some unsuspecting animal close enough, and then the gate shut closed, and it's good night for that animal. Um, so yeah, I mean they can be ferocious when they need to, but they are not 100% carnivorous. They are omnivorous, so they'll eat plant material. A lot of
Sure.
times, I've collected fecal material from the alligator snappers I've caught, and it's been mostly like seed pods or nuts, things like that, and
Mm.
so they can play an important role in dispersing riparian vegetation seeds. And as you know, riparian vegetation is really important for the health of a stream or creek or
Yeah.
river. So they can benefit their habitat not only by population control of the
Yeah.
lower food chain, taking out weakened individuals, but by also um, kind of helping the riparian vegetation.
Wow. How do you trap these?
So I use what we call hoop nets. It's a series of steel hoops that have a net attached to them, and inside they have that netting forms a throat, which is an opening, And on the last hoop, I have a container full of cut bait, stinky fish. And the opening of the net faces downstream. So as the smell of that cut bait goes downstream, it'll attract the turtles to come upstream looking for that food. And hopefully they'll come into the net, into the throat. And once they enter the throat, they can't exit. And the top of the net is always above the water surface because they have lungs, they don't have gills, so they have to get oxygen to breathe, and so they can always surface to get some air while they're in the trap. And so it's a pretty exciting thing to come the next morning and find an alligator snapper um, in the net. The biggest excitement or the biggest pain I've ever had. I once had three snappers in one net, and it was only me out there. Sometimes I'll have folks out there helping me, but that day it was only me, and so I only had one container. And I'm actually going to try to work with a friend to write a children's book about this. So I only had one container, and so I was able to fit two of the snappers in that one container, heads facing the other way so they wouldn't bite each other. And then I kept the smallest one in the net on top of the container as I waded about half a mile in the river back to where my output was. And so sometimes, I was in, water waist deep so I could sort of lay on the turtle. Other times it was to my knees. And so I was like having to really bend over all the while trying to make sure that I knew where the head was, that those in the bucket weren't fighting, and so it was a pretty gnarly morning. But like I said, I came through it unscathed. But that's been the biggest surprise, catching three in one trap.
You waited half a mile. How long did that take?
Oh, it took me probably about 30 minutes
Oh,
to
I thought it would have been longer. Wow.
no, when the stretches were the water was higher, I tried to make it as fast as I could because I knew my back couldn't take the more shallow stretches. So yeah, I mean it was I definitely took the afternoon off that day.
Yeah. So what with those specifically with the alligator snappers then like what where are you kind of at? Like, what are you researching about them? Is it just about the fact that they're in the Cahaba and that they're this far north? Like, what are you hoping to kind of learn about them as you research more?
Yeah, so with those, everyone that I catch, I mark. Each one has a unique mark so they can be individually identified.
Yeah.
And so I can catch them year after year, see how, it becomes, because some that I catch are small. Well, how fast do they grow in this habitat? Most of the work that's been done with alligator snappers have been in more or larger rivers and or more rural areas. Well, do they grow in a more urbanized stream in a smaller river? Um, and so I have to be able to identify those and track their growth over time. Some I take blood samples from and collaborate with a guy at Mississippi State to look at heavy metal levels, heavy metal toxicity in their blood, um, and just look at survival, like how when you're working with turtles, a lot of times it's a multi-year commitment because they're long-lived species, and so you want to track their survival, but you got to be out there and catching them to see if they're still around. So it's there's a number of different questions that you can ask. And so I'm wanting to kind of, like I said, with that collaboration with Birmingham Zoo, see where else they are. And then another person, another landowner who's on Valley Creek in the Black Warrior watershed. I've gone out there and tried to trap some and on his family property. We haven't caught one yet, but he sent me videos of massive ones. And so I want to kind of, can do some comparisons with those populations. So I mean that the number of questions can be numerous, but you got to have turtles. You got to have the data in order to see what questions may be worth asking.
Yeah.
And one thing I mean, there's no better place in the world to be a turtle biologist than Alabama. I mean, we're number one in turtle diversity. We are at the top of so many categories of aquatic diversity, and so it's really cool to um, to be able to do this work in my home state and contribute to the conservation of these various species.
Do you think the general public realizes that Alabama is number one for turtle diversity?
Um, Hopefully after they come to my presentations, they do. That's one thing I hope they remember. I always try to include that, but also include like, hey, we're number one um, in diversity, in turtle diversity, and crawfish diversity, and freshwater mussel diversity. We're at the top in freshwater fish diversity because we have habitat diversity. If we want to keep that biodiversity, we gotta help maintain the quality of our habitat. And so, another question I get a lot is, well, how can I help turtles? Well, one thing that you can do to help turtles is to um, support those organizations that protect that habitat. And we have just some great ones in the area. Obviously, Cahaba River Keeper, the River Keeper organization, Cahaba River Keeper, Black Warrior River Keeper, Coosa River Keeper, Cahaba River Society. In Trustville, we have a great organization, Friends of Pinchgut Creek,
Hmm.
which I sample for turtles. So by supporting those guys that champion the quality of the habitat, you are benefiting those species that depend on the habitat.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. All right, one other another thing I wanted to kind of unpack. I saw this. I don't know where I saw it, but you mentioned it, and I had written it down. But the study abroad in Belize. How
Mhm.
did that come about? How long have y'all been doing that, and why Belize?
Yeah, so um, the a former professor of mine at Appalachian State, he um, he and some colleagues of his started a educational travel company called Inspired Ventures. And they one of those guys had been taking school groups down to Belize for a number of years. Belize is a beautiful country, um, and for it's a relatively easy country to visit. A lot of the tourist areas they speak English. They take American dollars. They're very friendly, low crime, and so I always tell people like, hey, if you want to visit a country in Central America, Belize is a great option. And so um, during the so I kind of kept up with them, Mike, and saw that they've been doing stuff, and part of their work that they do with students down there is they do some wildlife camera monitoring of jaguar populations. And so during the pandemic, I needed some undergraduate research projects. And so I reached out to him like, hey, I have a student that needs a project. Could they analyze your wildlife camera photos for jaguars? And he's like, sure. And so we sort of reconnected through that. And through that work, I was like, man, it'd be awesome to take some students down to Belize. He's like, yeah. So I teach at Talladega College, which is Alabama's oldest private historically black college. And it was basically founded by individuals who were former slaves. So it was a great history. But being at HBCU, a lot of the students that are there haven't had the opportunities to travel,
Sure.
especially travel abroad. And so I was like, well, let's see what we can do to try to give some students an opportunity to do something they maybe have never had the chance to.
Yeah.
And so we were able to do that. We got support from administrators, and 2 years ago, I took two students down there, and I was like, well, if I'm going down to Belize, they got turtles down there. Let me get a permit and do some work down there. And
Yeah.
so I was, got a scientific research permit, and so some of the places that we stay are right on the water, and so I do sampling down there, and it's just been great. It's been great for an opportunity to get students involved in research. Um, I brought I brought Talladega College students over to the Cahaba and to do some alligator snapper, and they're at first are really hesitant, but they are proud of themselves for doing it because it gets them out of the comfort zone, and that's really all you can ask for as a teacher is for students to trust you and to go along with you, and and the pride they have once they do that is pretty gratifying. And so yeah, I mean, so I've been doing that work for 2 years down there, been able to see some new species and doing the same sort of mark recapture work that we do here, but just doing it down there, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, it's fun to some people have different various bucket lists. Well, for a lot of biologists, they have species bucket lists, and so the more different species of turtles I can mark off that list, the happier I am.
How many do you have on that list that you've marked off? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I'm really I pale in comparison to some guys. Some folks have been pretty impressive, but I don't know. I would say I've almost at least marked off all the ones in Alabama, so I at least have to start with that, and then
Sheesh.
I can start to go global. Worry about that.
Well, with trips to Belize, you've already gone international, so
Yeah, 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 yeah. So,
you're on the way.
that's yeah, yeah. It's fun. Sometimes I have to remind myself that. Um, I have opportunities that other people, don't get to have, and so
Sure.
I always need to be thankful for that. So, always try to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I didn't have this like I always have these pop up questions. It inevitably happens when you're talking to someone. They say something and you think of something else to ask. But like I can see like just in you talking about this, you kind of say it all through a grin, and I'm wondering like how much do you love this?
Oh man, I do. You do have those moments where it's like maybe stresses you out, or you mess up and you're like, oh man, I didn't collect that when I needed to, or not that. But when I'm out there in the river catching turtles, I'm like just a big kid. And sometimes I may let out a little hoot or holler, when I'm by myself. When I'm with folks, I try to be calm and
Sure.
the formal professional that I guess I need. But when I mean, it's fun. It's fun to go out and catch animals. I mean, I still, yeah. I mean, my kids are getting to the age where um, they can go out in the field with me, and I was like, man, y'all are lucky. Yeah, to go out and go catch alligator snappers, and yeah, it's fun. It's fun, and that's why I like doing these programs, to kind of see the kids light up, and the adults too.
Mhm.
Talking about the different turtles and hear their stories, and inevitably, kids will raise their hands, and it's you think they have a question, they just want to share a story, and you just want and that's awesome, because I was that kid. I was right there with them, and I can, like I said, I can be a little kid when I'm working with these guys.
Yeah. So like I know I've been I don't know where all you do those presentations, but I've been to the ones at the Trustful Public Library, and this particular podcast will probably come out after this next time. But like, you get kind of a range of ages at that thing, but everybody's pretty young. It's parents and young kids. How do you kind of is it easy? Like, is it like how do you kind of tailor what you say? Like, you're a college professor, but these are like 6 year olds. Like, how do you tailor it to them?
Yeah, you just always try to just keep that in mind, because um, yeah, I can get into the science of it real quick and nerd out, but I mean, they're not there for that. They want to see the animals, and I want to show them the animals. And so, I think, they the want to kind of, maybe the older ones want to learn more about the science and some of that. So I try to start off with that.
Mm.
But inevitably, I know I'm not the star of the show. So I just need to, get to
Huh.
it and shut up, and show the turtles. So, yeah, I've done a range of presentations, and I like doing, I present at conferences, and all the way down to, showing it to, I took some turtles to my kids, classrooms at Payne Elementary, and I enjoy doing it all because it all has a purpose. Everyone has a particular contribution, hopefully, and hopefully, maybe one of those kids, you never know, will go on and do great things in science, and maybe even turtles, and maybe even, collaborate with me down the road. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, I one thing I try to tell my students is just be open. You don't know where life is going to take you, and so don't necessarily be closed minded to a certain path. I mean, I never thought I would be necessarily doing this, teaching and doing research. I had hopes and maybe something like that, but
Sure.
like I said, I feel very blessed to have the opportunities that I have had, and so I try to do what I can to share it.
Yeah. What's next for you in your research? Well, like what's on the horizon for the next year, couple years?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I obviously continue with the research. I'm always trying to figure out ways to get my students involved in that. I don't really see them in the summer where it's turtle season.
Yeah.
When school comes to an end, I look at my wife and be like, "It's turtle season now." It's on, and she knows that I'll be out. But and so I try to figure out ways to, you know, how can I ask more questions? I have this turtle in hand. What other questions can I ask? So, another um, area of research I've been doing for the past couple of years is looking at communities of diatoms, which are microscopic algae
Hmm.
that live on the shell of turtles. I mean, they live
Okay.
everywhere, in the water, in the oceans, in in the water column, on
Yeah.
substrate, and so we've been looking at that using scantron or scanning electron microscopy. So that's been something new I've been trying to learn. Something this year I'm going to look at is trying to look at the presence of parasitic eggs that turtles pass to see how, what species, how prevalent they
Okay.
are in our turtles. And that all happens through collaborations. I'm not above emailing somebody and be like, hey, I
Yeah.
don't know anything about this, but you want to help me learn? You want to work on something together? And so for that one, thankfully, a former um, grad student and still friend who's a parasitologist at University of Florida. She's been very helpful. Be like, yeah, I'll help. Maybe we can work together. So those come up whenever I can figure something out, or see something that kind of turns on a light bulb. So, I mean, the plan is to continue doing what I'm doing, and seeing where it takes me. Um, and see what new collaborations I can have.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask you one last thing, kind of off the cuff, and I have no idea if you would know anything about this at all. Kind of like you said, I have no idea, but I'm gonna ask the question. You mentioned like early on, kind of studying sea turtles. I know this is not a turtle I'm about to ask about, but all this shark stuff in the Gulf. Do you know anything about like why they're so close in and why all of it, I say all of a sudden, why it seems like they're closer and all of that?
I mean, um, um, I would say I'm not very well versed on it, but I would say that it may not be as um, unusual as we might think. It's just maybe like, hey, we spend more time in their area, and so things like this may happen. Obviously, climate change is always a pretty omnipresent factor in things, and I don't necessarily know that it has anything to do with that. Maybe bringing prey in earlier in the season,
Hmm,
or maybe their natural prey populations are down. A lot of things are cyclical in nature,
sure.
um, and so But if certain things kind of tip the balance the wrong way,
Yeah.
then those cycles can be unbalanced, and things unnatural can happen. So I don't necessarily um, I don't think there should be cause for concern as of yet. Um, I think we have a number of outstanding. I know shark biologists down in Mississippi, and I mean they. I would say until they raise the alarm about something, then I think it's just totally unfortunate. Oh man, my heart goes out to all the
Yeah.
people and their families who have suffered. But I don't necessarily think that um, it's like something
Yeah.
maybe out of the ordinary yet. But
Right.
again, I'll preface that with saying I don't
Don't know.
work
Yeah.
with that on a daily basis. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
I
and,
mean,
well, and then you can also like throw in, this is just me spitballing. Obviously, I don't know at all, but like you even throw in the fact these days that, I mean, there was a time where not too long ago you'd be on the beach and you didn't have a cell phone, you didn't have a camera, you didn't have a cell phone with a camera good enough to do hardly anything, and now everybody's down there like this, and
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's like a small like human element of things online can make things seem bigger or happening more than might be true. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if the number of people fishing in certain areas have increased, and that we saw when I was a sea turtle biologist for a number of years, we got hundreds of turtles off the fishing piers in Mississippi. um, but I think that you know n- something, um, populations were increasing of the sea turtles, and so that contributed to some of it. And uh, you know, but numbers have gone down since then. So it could, again, it just who knows? I mean,
Yes.
that's a value of long term data sets, because if it's something is cyclical and you get a short snapshot of it, you don't know where in the cycle that snapshot's coming from. And
Yeah.
so the value of good data collection really uh, comes into view when in some instances. So yeah, it's completely a terrible, tragic situation. But um, you know, I would say as a scientist, I trust science, um, and know that it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And so, I sort of wait for a scientist um, to kind of lead the way.
Absolutely. When's World Turtle Day?
It was May 23rd.
I
Uh,
just missed it.
yeah, but this is Wild Turtle Week. I sort of lose track of stuff. I mean, every day is Turtle Day for a turtle biologist. So I mean, if you ask my wife, so yeah, I mean, but whatever we can do to get more eyeballs and more appreciation of these guys, the better.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap this thing up there. And if, folks who watch this or listen to this or whatever, if that's something they want to take interest in, they can go urbanturtleproject.org. Is that the best
Yes,
place?
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
best place?
It needs a serious need of updating, and that's my one of my goals for the summer. So, but yeah, I need to do. I try to update that with sort of what the project has done. I have a Facebook page that's also in serious need of updating. So that yeah, those are two of the best ways to kind of keep in touch with the. And if you see me around Trustville, always feel free to talk turtles
I love it. I love it. Well, I
or
appreciate you.
pickleball.
There you go. I know you're big into that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I am. I am. It's fun.
You liking the new facility?
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, it's I'm very happy that they were able to do it, and it's a great sport.
Yeah.
It's a good family sport.
I am glad they put it in that location.
Yeah. I think it has worked out for the best.
It is right across the street from the other racket sport. So
Yeah, yeah,
how much more sense could that make? So
yeah, yeah.
well, I appreciate you doing this, Andy, and folks, don't forget urbanturtleproject.org. Find Urban Turtle Project on Facebook, and hopefully I will see you soon around Trustful. Maybe see you in the river or something.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right. I
All right.
appreciate you, Andy. Thank you for doing this.
All right, no problem. All right, take care.
You too.